Senate Democrats want to let Syrian and Iraqi refugees into the U.S. Republicans say it would be a huge mistake. Republican Senator from South Dakota, John Thune, is with me now. Senator, glad to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Deirdre.
Senators Rubio and Cruz went to D.C. today, in other words, even got off the campaign trail, which is hot, to try to address this issue. What happens?
Well, what happened, Deirdre, was a bill came over from the House that calls for vetting, certification by the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the Director of National Intelligence that refugees coming into this country do not present a security risk to people in this country. So it's a simple, fairly simple bill, I think a fairly reasonable bill. We tried to call it up today to just be able to debate it and amend it, and the Democrats blocked it from even being considered. It's called a motion to proceed. It takes 60 votes to get on a bill, and the Democrats had the requisite number to stop it. So that's what happened on the floor today. It's a big issue. It's an issue that's important to our national security, and one that I think needs to be addressed. And the fact that the Democrats were willing on this procedural vote today to block it, I think is going to be very difficult for them to defend.
So, Senator, I want to ask you, because you introduced an amendment to the bill that would give governors the ability to refuse taking refugees. Did the Senate and any of the Democrats or anyone you were speaking with recognize that each state, that is to say the governor, understands the resources and the difference in resources in his or her state?
Right. Unfortunately, Deirdre, because the Democrats blocked us, prevented us from even getting on the bill, I didn't get an opportunity to debate or have that amendment voted on, but I did file it, and it's very simple. We heard from 30 governors last year who want to be able to have some control over their borders and who comes in. And so all this simply would have done is allowed them to have more participation in that process, to meet with the Secretary of State's office when they're having these discussions about vetting refugees, and hopefully to have more input into it. And if they decide that there are concerns that their state has about admitting certain people, that they would be able not to have to do that. So that's what the amendment did, but unfortunately we didn't even get a chance to amend or to debate that, simply because they blocked the consideration of the bill.
The governor of Kansas was with us a few weeks ago and said he is very concerned for his residents' safety, which is the point that you made right when we began speaking. I want to ask you also about something, Senator, that you wrote, an op-ed style piece on President Obama and the numerous executive orders that he is trying to pass in his last year in office. We just want to bring our viewers up to speed with some comments that the president made back in 2014.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't, and I've got a telephone. I've got a pen and I've got a phone.
So this message that in his last year of office was the implication, obviously, when he was speaking in 2014, that he was just going to try to push through unilaterally as much as possible. To what extent is this tarnishing his legacy?
Well, and I think even this week his spokesperson said that he's going to be audacious in using executive action to accomplish his objectives. And the problem with that, and I try to point this out in the op-ed, Deirdre, is if you live by executive action, you're going to die by executive action. And if he's really interested in having a legacy, he gave that up when he determined that he was going to go around the Congress, basically ignore the people's representatives, and try and accomplish his agenda through regulatory action, executive orders, and that sort of thing. And what that means is that can be overturned by the next president. And many of his executive actions have ended up in the courts, and the courts have ruled against him. So much of his agenda, the things that he wanted to accomplish, have been done by executive order, which is a very fleeting accomplishment. It doesn't endure, and it's not going to stand the test of time. And I think that this president is going to go down in history as somebody who tried to assert more power at the executive branch probably than anybody since Woodrow Wilson. And that's not a good formula for how to get things done for the American people.
And even as you rightly point out, Senator, from a practical standpoint, if the Supreme Court is going to be forced to check some of these measures, it's a use of everyone's time. Senator John Thune, thank you as always, joining us.
Thanks,
there
Deirdre.
From Capitol Hill.